top riding like this. You think you're putting in 100% and you have no idea how you're going to get that extra pace from keeping up with little Timmy down the block who's been eyeing off your girl all week? Well, today we're going to break you guys out of C and B class and show you the tips and tricks that top riders use to get ahead and start winning races more often. This is Pix, let's get started. Now, before we get going, these tips are based on version 2.10 and onwards. If anything changes, I'll be sure to do an updated version in future, so make sure you're subbed and you get notified when these changes come down the line. Starting off with gameplay settings, turn airborne throttle to user input. This is to help give greater control over whips and scrubs, which we'll get to later in the video. Having this set to auto disable will mimic shutting off the throttle once you leave the lip of a jump, but we don't want that. We want to be able to control the pitch of our bike at all times. Pro physics. This is a big one, but I'm going to summarize it for you here quickly. Turn this off for racing to help with consistency and to help minimize any potential crashes. But if you're out there to have fun and get that flowy goodness or just doing freestyle, you're best to turn pro physics on so you're not being limited by any assists that the game's trying to help you with. The reason I'm not going into too much detail is because the devs actually plan to remove the Pro Physics feature and replace it with sliders to adjust how the assists work, but this is still in development for now and we'll just have to wait to see when it comes out how it's all going to function. Custom camera, make that enabled. At the end of the video, I'm actually going to go over my field of view and custom camera settings, so stay tuned for that. Max field of view, we want that enabled. Reflex gyro, keep that enabled. Scrub dead zone and quick scrub dead zone. Now this is just what I've found works best for me. You might want to have a play with this because if you're activating scrubs too soon or not soon enough, this is where you're going to be able to tune that. So scrub dead zone to smaller, quick scrub dead zone to larger. Over to controls. Transmission, set this to manual. This gives you greater control when riding in the meaty part of the power, which is a crucial part of becoming a fastest boy. Gamepad, I run this default. Basically because I've got an elite controller, I have the paddles bound to my gear change up and down. But just have a play with this because it's really going to be personal preference for what you want. If you're on PC, turn VSync off unless you're getting screen tearing. Display to windowed full screen. FPS cap to 60 as going unlimited will actually change the physics to make it feel a bit more dopey. This isn't as noticeable in 2.10, but in any case, the devs have recommended that all PC players lock this to 60. And a little tip, if you're playing at 60 and your monitor goes up beyond to 100, 120, whatever, make sure your monitor's locked to 60 as well. It actually aligns the frames and makes it feel a lot more smoother. Alright, onto the bike tunes. The settings we're changing here first have basically been the same since launch. So these are set and forget and should hopefully be the same across all the updates unless the devs have changed something later down the track, which is likely. Engine to -3, which is max acceleration. Clutch to -3, which is max clutch boost. This is basically the most OP setting in the game and it helps form a strong foundation for speed. Frame to +3 for max flexibility. Brakes to +3 for max stoppage. If you're playing with Pro Physics on, this means you just need to be a bit more careful when modulating the brake to ensure you don't go over the bars because you can actually tip over in this case. Now onto suspension. For Supercross I like +2 as this adds a bit more handling to the bike, as you can see down in the bottom left meter bar. This gives you a bit more of a reactive feeling to the bike and it just holds up a little bit better through the whoops when you're hitting it at speed. For motocross I prefer 0 or +1 right in the middle because it feels smoother over the bumps and ruts, but it also opens you up to frame casing on the bigger jumps, so you do need to be careful and be more smooth, so that's good to practice. Now onto tyres. For Supercross I run 0 or right in the middle as this level of traction helps when needing to turn tighter in certain corners, and for motocross I'll use either +1 or +2 depending on how I'm feeling. A good rule of thumb when it comes to tyre choice is if you're sliding too much, you're either using too much slip on the tyre, so you're running a negative number, or you're going too fast for the corner. Usually it's the latter, and why testing tyres to suit your play style is a key to success. I'm seeing a lot of people in the comments say, oh, it's too slidey or it's too slippery and I'm going over the ruts. But basically, we're going to go over this in corners when we get to it, but you really need to set up for the corner with the right speed and you're better coasting a little bit and then applying power halfway through the turn. So there's all these little things we're going to go over in our next segment. Okay, now we're starting off with our gameplay mechanics. The reason we've selected -3 for max clutch boost is because this is going to form the basis for our speed. For beginners new to spamming the clutch, I want you to focus on using the clutch twice during a corner, say apex and exit. Hit it again when you're going up the lip of a jump and again when you land. You also want to be hitting the clutch every time there's a large or small bump that's big enough to lift your wheels off the ground. I also want you hitting that like button, the clutch every time you feel the bike bogging down under power and after gear shifts. Here's a clip where I'm not using any clutch. And here's a clip where I'm using clutch out of the corner. And you can do the quad without the clutch, but you need to use maximum preload and be smooth around the corners. I actually quite like this riding style, but because this game provides such a huge clutch boost, you can ride a lot more consistently and accurately using the clutch. Speaking of changing gears, let's talk about manual gear shifts. And for those of you who haven't made the jump already from automatic, I highly recommend this change. It's not only a short amount of time where you need to get adjusted to manual, but it's just so much more powerful in certain areas. You don't bog as much, and basically you're deciding where the power goes. The two strongest gears in the game are definitely second and third. Prior to 2.10, third was probably the goated gear of choice, but they've definitely nerfed it since then. So second gear, especially in Supercross, is going to be the prime gear to choose when coming out of corners, and also sometimes on motocross tracks too. If you find you're really bogging down, you really want to drop that gear down to second gear, clutch boost, you're really going to feel that pickup. It also helps if you're going through a rhythm and you've over jumped one of the jumps. If you drop down to second, or if you're in fourth, drop down to third. Clutch boosting with that drop down in gear really gets you out of some sticky situations and gets you back onto that rhythm as soon as possible. A big strat for third gear is being smooth, and while trying to maintain high revs around corners, spam the clutch at least once every second to get that feel for when it starts pulling. Now onto scrubs. There's two different types of scrubs in Legends. There's the quick scrub and just the normal scrub. The quick scrub is medium effectiveness, keeps you pretty low. It allows you to do them quickly, say straight out of a corner onto a jump. And then there's the normal scrub, which is just hitting big faces, leading the bike right over on the lip and letting that thing whip out. That keeps you the lowest. And we'll run over some examples of both of those scrubs and all the different levels of scrubbage they give you, I suppose you could say. So we'll start off here just by showing a dead sailor, basically just straight lining the jump, seeing how far it'll go without any inputs. Our next here will be just holding down on the left stick. So again, we're just changing that trajectory to keep us lower. Now here's the quick scrub. This is the least effective version of the quick scrub, where you're pushing the sticks apart or in together. So there's two variations. You can do it right at the top of the jump or right at the base of the jump to give you a bigger effect. And here's the quick scrub with pulling down on the left stick. Now this is the second version of the quick scrub, where you'll see the rider leaning the bike all the way over on the lip and then trying to stand it back up as you go through the air. And this is achieved by starting the quick scrub earlier by holding the sticks together or apart for longer. Now we're on to the normal scrubs. Similar to the quick scrub, there's a couple of different variations where quickly pulling it over just as you leave the lip gives you a little bit of a scrub, and then holding it at basically the transition of the jump at the base, and holding that for longer leans the bike right over, and you'll see him whip it all the way out. This gives you your lowest trajectory. The normal scrubs are done by holding both sticks in the same direction, and as soon as you leave the lip, holding down the whole time, as you can see in this clip on the left stick, will help you get a little bit lower. Doing a combination of what we've learnt so far, you can then ride onto the rest of the track to do harder obstacles. Like right here, there's a large uphill triple, and tying together scrubs with preload and then the left stick up to try and get the maximum amount of air over jumps, you should be able to get it. Now onto preload, seat bounce, and using the left stick. So there's 4 types of preload. There's regular preload, forward preload, seat bounce, and combined preload and seat bounce. Now, touch on all 4, but towards the end, there's actually what I use for race, and it's not that complicated. It kind of simplifies this whole process. And to touch on the color system, it's basically white is the preload seat bounce, means that it's possible. Brown is the weakest. Yellow is middle of the range, decent, and green is your max preload or seat bounce. So for regular preload, which shoots us higher in the air, we're pulling the right stick back about a second before you leave the lip. And then when you leave the lip, just let the right analog stick go. And you can see here I'm pushing forward on the stick, but that's after I've already let the right stick go. You'll see it stop in the middle, and then I push forward just to bring that front wheel down. Now for the forward preload, this is exactly the same as the normal preload, except instead of letting the stick go and letting it snap back to center, we're actually pushing it all the way forward. And this is supposed to spring the rider forward and give us a bit more momentum. This is really the main technique I use. I don't really let it snap back to center. And you'll also notice this is a bit easier to get max preload on. For the seat bounce, this is much like the normal preload where you're pulling back on the left stick and then just letting go. The main difference between both of them, besides using different sticks, is that the seat bounce can be activated a lot quicker than the normal preload. And again, I'm just pushing forward on the right stick here to bring the front wheel down. Now here we combine seat bounce and forward preload. This is probably the more challenging of the bunch because you've got to time them separately. A mistake I used to make was actually pulling both sticks back and then pushing them both forward. They'll actually cancel out your seat bounce, so they need to be timed individually. You can see here I'm pulling the left stick back first and then pulling the right stick back. And as I let go of the left stick, I'm pushing the right stick forward as I leave the lip. And that's the preload and seat bounce system in Legends. Now, as you'll notice, I didn't actually do the quad using those techniques. So I'm going to show you what I do here to actually do the quad, and it's pretty easy. And it just involves the right stick, which is forward preload. And then once we leave the lip, we're actually going to use the left stick to bump the rider up. And what that does is it lifts the bike up into the rider, giving us a bit more forward momentum and range. We're even casing the quintuple here. And just to show how powerful this technique is, I'll actually use third to go around this corner instead of using second just to go straight. And we'll get that actual quintuple pretty easily. Now on to cornering. For Supercross, the gear that I mainly use is either second or third. Second at the moment seems to be really powerful and you can get away using it in a lot of locations, especially if you're using manual transmission and clutch boost. There really is no dead spot to it. It's really reactive, where third can be a little bit more laggy around the corners. It just labors if you're not high enough in the revs. For speed, you want to make sure you're not going too fast, otherwise you just slide. Again, this is going to depend on what your tire settings are like, but you want to make sure that you're actually slowing right down to what you need to take the corner safely without overriding it. It's easy to override in Legends, and that's when you start getting the slippage that you see and you go over the rut or over the berm, and it really doesn't work out for you. So you're actually going to be a lot faster if you slow down in this game. So a good technique is actually coming into the corner and braking enough to coast around the corner and then clutch boosting out. I'll give you another example of that. So if you come in too hot, you'll actually shoot off to the left of the track, getting onto the gas too early. That just means you're getting on the gas a little bit too soon. Wait till about over halfway through the corner. And you can actually time it. The bike just wants to track forward. That's when you know you're getting good speed through the turns. So much like Supercross, you need to take your time with the corners. A good rule of thumb is to come in, select your line that you're going to take and aim for it, and then let off the gas and coast as much as you need to. For practicing, just coast as early as you need to. Get on the brake and then power out, clutch boosting all the way. So we'll do it again here. Power, brake, coast, power out. On a lot of these corners, you're going to feel the bike sliding into the turn. And this is a good way to kind of manage how you're coasting, and when the bike grips up again, starts biting, that's when you clutch out and pull back. So just there, you can see we're sliding into the turn, clutching out. And that's what you really want to time. Onto whoops. Whoops are a tricky one. It's really different each time you hit the whoops, and you've just got to get basically a feel to how the bike's reacting and whether to pull up or down on the left stick. Right stick isn't as crucial because essentially the left stick is what's going to hold your bike and rider up from falling in between the whoops. Once you start falling in between the whoops, you'll actually get a big kick, and that's when you get that either front wheel or rear wheel buck that you sometimes get. But just coming to whoops with speed, lift up on the left stick or lift down, depends on the actual set of whoops that you're going into. In this case, I haven't actually mastered these ones, but we'll give it a shot. So I'm pushing up on the left, and I'm just going to hold it there. And you can see there, that wasn't a blistering pace. I was actually stuck in second. But you can see that's a great example of just having the right balance, holding up on the left. You can see a few little bucks, but essentially that's what you're looking for. Get that feel and just keep practicing those. So I'm just holding forward a little bit and then forward right at the end. Clutching third, lifting up. Oop, another buck, but that's good enough. Just to simplify, a good rule of thumb is actually pushing up on the left stick and back on the right stick. That gets you through, you know, a lot of maybe 80% of the whoops. But again, when you start bucking, you can't do that. And you'll need to reposition the left stick. Oh, see there, I'm letting off. Then getting back, trying to get back onto the line. See a bit of a kick there, and I had to release the right stick. Get the setup, click third, hold back, wait for that bump. There we go. And here's a side-on shot, tapping each whoop, just holding back as we were. Another one where you can see a bit of a buck. Watch the wheel dive down. Just a bad start in general. You can really see what it does for the rest of the whoop section. And another good one. Just trying to tap the wheel on each whoop. Missed a few there, but good enough. So in terms of my field of view settings, I use chase far, but then I also customize it. I can't actually remember what the default chase far was, but essentially all you need to do to change the field of view is make sure max field of view is enabled in the settings, and then holding either bumper. So left bumper is, oh, just click on here. Left bumper is up and down with the directional buttons to change the height of the camera. Left and right will actually turn it left and right. I'm not a huge fan of side cams. It feels a bit weird when I'm riding. And then right bumper is in and out. So that moves the camera physically in and out from the rider. And then if you push left and right on the D-pad, it actually widens up the field of view. So you can actually get pretty crazy with it. I see some guys running with the field of view right out and the camera's right up. I just, yeah, can't get used to it. The game looks a bit goofy when you do that. So chase far and then pull the field of view back and get the height. Basically, you want the probably about 10 meters in front of the rider, not even 10, maybe 7 meters in front of the rider or so. You want to be able to look over the top of the rider's head and see where you're tracking. And that's about it, without having actual sliders with number figures to show you exactly where my camera is. You just can't really give that information. So it doesn't really matter. Just get used to what you're comfortable with, what you think, how much the rider should take up on your screen. And that's basically it. Now onto some quickfire bonus tips. Play around with your settings. While the settings in this video are the current meta for the game, there's no harm in finding the right playstyle that suits yourself. And with the up-and-coming rider assist adjustments, there's going to be even more freedom to help refine a style that best suits you. Watch other players. Once you're familiar with how the rider positioning works, watch other riders' footage to show when they're clutching, pushing and pulling on the left and right stick, and when they're scrubbing and holding down on the left stick. A little tip is to watch the butt of the rider. No joke, I'm telling you, it tells a story. Use up and down on the left stick more often. Not only does this help you change trajectory when you're in the air, it also helps keep you above the bumps on motocross tracks, which can help you immensely when accelerating. Be wary of how the scrub mechanic works. So this game works by calculating the steepness of the ground in front of you in order to initiate a scrub. This can sometimes come unstuck when you're cornering around a steep, tall corner or going up a hill and you're using the right stick. So I recommend try and use the left stick as much as you can to turn in these situations and get a feel for when that scrub accidentally engages. Changing your direction in the air. So left stick not only works by pushing the bike into the ground or pulling it up, but if you whip the bike to one side, say 90 degrees from the direction you're going, you can actually use the left stick to push up and push and shift the rider that way. So this can help you from either landing on someone or going off track. It's super handy. All right, guys, I'm gonna leave it there. This has been a long one. If you found some of the tips help you, let me know in the comments, or if you've got any tips of your own, let me know. And make sure to subscribe because the devs are actively developing this game at the moment, and based on all of your feedback, they're just continuing to implement new things and update new features. So we're gonna see some changes coming down the line. Make sure you're subbed, and I'll update those when they come through. But thanks again for watching, guys. Really appreciate the support lately, and I'll see you in the next one.